Following the new Prime asset Liliya Bogomolova being introduced during Project Messiah, we recently got a time-limited event called Advent of Bogomolova. This sees Liliya being placed into other trials outside the confines of our own trial. With this update, there were a few new documents leaked out into the trial environments, so we're going to take a look at those. There are only 5 new files in this update, so this will be a fairly short video. Also, sorry for my lateness in talking about this lore update. I've been super busy with another very large project, but anyway, that's enough blabbering, let's get into it. Oh, and there will be spoilers for Outlast in this video. So in the previous update, we were introduced to Liliya Bogomolova, a woman with a pretty traumatic childhood who seems to have an exceptional level of charisma, which, as you'll remember, is something Easterman thinks is very important. Her level of charisma was such that she would convince rich, powerful men, such as the super wealthy Trigaway family, to sell their possessions, and they joined what was in essence a cult, and very powerful men would mutilate themselves for her. So Easterman took an interest in her file, and she was transferred from Mount Massive Hospital over to Sinyala in a patient transfer. You could say a collab between these two locations. During her trial to spoil the auction, she would be tapping into the egregore, the collective consciousness that appears to have formed inside Sinyala and among the reagents, as the reagents regularly hear her words, in which she speaks of the second age of miracles and that the secret of the kingdom of God has been given to the chosen. We saw that she was having an effect on people there at Sinyala from the moment she arrived. Even Easterman would write about how she refused to talk in interviews, but she would seemingly throw words, but Easterman couldn't understand what she was saying. One thing to point out, as I did in the previous update, was that the reagents can hear her. Deep and subtle manipulation being the words that we used to describe it, but onto the new documents. The ones regarding Liliya are from February 1961, but the one we'll look at first is of the HR set, and that is from January 1961. In another previous update, I spoke about the Belgian Congo, which was under colonial rule, which itself gave rise to nationalist movements within the country that demanded an end to Belgian rule. Large parts of Africa were gaining independence from colonial rule, and the Congolese wanted this too, so the Belgian government got the ball rolling on making that happen. Two of the large nationalist parties were ABACO and the MNC. Joseph Kasavubu was the leader of ABACO, and Patrice Lumumba the leader of the MNC. Elections were held, but neither of these two parties won a majority, so Kasavubu would become the president and Lumumba the prime minister in what was now to become the Democratic Republic of Congo. Lumumba despised the Belgian colonizers and wanted them completely gone, and so did others, so many people moved over to his side. Long story short, another party leader, Moise Tshombe of the Konakat party, decided that one of the regions in the country, Katanga, would become an independent state supported by the Belgians. This was now a full-blown crisis. A civil war had erupted, with it basically being a proxy war between the US and the Soviets. And then Kasavubu accused Lumumba of being a communist, a move which was orchestrated by Washington. I mean, they weren't wrong, as Lumumba was indeed being backed by the Soviets. Kasavubu tried to purge the Congolese government of radicalist elements, including Lumumba, and Lumumba tried to fire Kasavubu. Both parties claimed they were the legal government, then a man named Joseph Mobutu then staged a coup d'etat, ousting them both with the support of the West. Lumumba was then killed after he was handed over to Moise Tshombe, which is where our new document comes in. On the 18th of January 1961, the day after Lumumba's death, Avianos is speaking with Olivier Baranchik, and she is saying that the information is not public yet. They speak about the very horrific death Lumumba suffered, which involved broken bones and acid. They speak of how Alan Welsh Dulles, director of the CIA, must be thrilled with the news, and although it's not clear that a reagent took out Lumumba, Murkoff still got paid for the contract. But the dissolving of bodies in acid is something that the reagents have been conditioned to do, as seen in a few of the trials, so it is entirely possible a reagent carried out their task, as was seen in the Congo ending. Baranchik then speaks about the Beard, Castro, and about multiple contracts being placed on him too, to which Avianos replies that those are in the works. Considering the Bay of Pigs invasion took place in Cuba in April 1961, this could be what they're referring to here. They then speak about John F. Kennedy, who in November 1960 had just won the presidential election. Many in both Murkoff and the CIA were concerned that Kennedy would start to mess their operations up. Avianos reassured Baranchik that Kennedy is for money and he knows how to kiss the ring, so to speak. But moving on to the Liliya files. On the 14th of February 1961, Easterman is journaling about Liliya's effects on the reagents. He talks about seeing reagents in the sleep room as patients reborn, hungry to learn that they are a far cry from the cowards that walked into Sinyala. He speaks of their eyes shining with inspiration. And he talks about another Cress chemical which is keeping them somewhat docile, as he claims they would be rutting like dogs, apparently. He talks of an early spring and writes about his loins, calling it a feeling of pleasant anxiety. He initially was led to think that he may have been poisoned, but again, seems he's still paranoid after having been poisoned with thallium a year earlier, an event that resulted in his hair falling out and his hair was starting to grow back again. He seems to be flush with optimism. A couple of days later, on the 16th, Easterman journals again, and he writes about mannequins and puppets, tools that have been key to the therapy since the program began. At Liliya, she becomes the mannequin. As he puts it, the ventriloquist's dummy operated by a malicious god. Easterman says that he's been having dreams of erotic imagery, which is something that a note in Outlast found close to the Signala facility in 2013 referred to, in which the writer of the note saw visions of flames, insects, and sexual organs the closer he got to the towers. Now this is just a theory, but in the Liliya trailer, a praying mantis is seen on the screen which Easterman is sat watching, which links into Liliya herself. Maybe Easterman is experiencing this, explaining why he's having these strange dreams. Easterman writes that he needs to convince the cowards of Signala to allow him to introduce Liliya into more trials. After scribbling more nonsense, Easterman talks about him wanting to visit the catatonic ward, which is of course where our friend Amelia is. That same day, his comment about trying to convince the cowards of Signala to let him put Liliya into other trials now sees him having called a meeting with Signala architect Moses Scarfiotti and Alice Avianos, in which he is showing them cross-sections of a part of the brain called Heschel's gyrus from the brains of reagents who were exposed to Liliya. Easterman is pointing something very interesting out. Small lesions on the brain, consistent between subjects. He tells them this is the evidence they need in order to conduct more ambitious experiments. Now, lesions on the brain is something we've seen before. We've seen it in the Murkoff account in which the Jane Doe that escaped from Temple Gate was found to have lesions on her brain, which was a result of the radio towers at Signala. In the ending of a previous update, we'd seen that Wernicke was speaking about lesions or tumours in the brain. Easterman says that the reagents are now more inspired, alive and engaged, to which Avianos agrees, and Easterman states that Liliya seems to be amplifying the therapy. He tells them the part of the brain that lights up when in the presence of speech is the Heschel gyrus, even more so when people talk to themselves. Neurons associated with an internal monologue. He says that reagents are not hearing Liliya, but are instead hearing themselves telling themselves her words. Avianos stresses the point that the reagents are hearing her words and not Easterman's words. This is why Easterman wants a more extreme program for the therapy, a program that Moses Scarfiotti thinks is wildly irresponsible. I mean, when Scarfiotti has shown concern in terms of overall security threats, he's been right about it. The chum buckets and Amelia and her escape being an example. Anyway, Easterman says Liliya's presence is like fertilizer for reagents' brains. He calls them thirsty vessels. Scarfiotti rightly brings up that introducing Liliya into trial environments not hardened against her capabilities is asking for a disaster. As mentioned in the previous update, Liliya was purposely confined within the lodge environment, surrounded by freezing cold areas because she was considered to be so dangerous. Easterman starts laughing and Scarfiotti asks if Easterman is back on the drugs, but he says that he's sober. He says that perhaps Liliya's presence has awakened something in him, and that he feels great things manifesting. Scarfiotti again is stubborn, saying that they can't allow this, citing not only another potential escape, but also danger to Signala's staff, to which Avianos replies that they've managed to keep their staff alive so far, beyond reasonable measure of course. Easterman calls this an advent. Advent is defined as the arrival of something that has been awaited. And finally, 5 days later, the Murkoff board approved the program, but they do explicitly state that reagents participating in the therapy program are to be kept under strict 24-hour surveillance. Something tells me that something big is about to happen. But that's it for this short lore update from the Outlast trials. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and subscribe. Also leave a comment below with what you think is going to come of this new, dangerous program and the potential disaster coming at Signala. But for now, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.